our dear organizers of this conference for this amazing opportunity to be here. I've been enjoying this gathering so much, and it has enriched my own understanding of what we do already. And we still have almost an entire day to go, so I'm only expecting the new revelations to come. So I came here to talk about a little bit on a subject that is a little bit connected to what Miruna has spoken about, which is the invisible lines and the transitional letters in the medieval Hebrew manuscripts. So first, let's talk what do I actually mean when I say those terms. Invisible lines that have been mentioned a little bit throughout our conversations are the lines that are not supposed to be here. A scribe should have fully lifted a writing instrument, but for whatever reason, they didn't do this. As a result, the movement that should have been done in the air were left at an often faint trace on the writing support. Such lines are very useful for trying to reconstruct the ductus of this particular letter. This notion was widely used during the discussions by the Midrash team or Judas team, to be more precise, regarding the Aleph Lamed nexus and or ligature. Transitionary letters, these are the letters that represent the intermediate forms between different modes of writing. So for writing in Hebrew, we generally have three modes: square, non-square, also called semi-cursive or Benoni, and cursive. While square script has more or less a model which is modern Israeli printed square script, which is used as a model when we talk about square script, for example, in Hebrew PAL, because my presentation is, as Miruna's presentation is based on the Hebrew PAL and the work we have done for the Hebrew PAL. For the other two modes, Benoni or semi-cursive or non-square and square, we don't have this type of a very set in stone model. Also, from my personal standpoint, both Benoni and cursive modes are spectrums, and so we can have a variety of scripts closer to a different type, a different end of the spectrum. So transitionary letters are letters that showcase how the shapes that are characteristic more or less for one mode get transformed into the shapes that are more characteristic of another mode. So the majority of the examples that I'm going to present you here, they exemplify the transition between Benoni or non-square into a cursive script. So again, as I've already said, it consists of the manuscripts from BNF and also from the Parma collection that were annotated during my work for Hebrew PAL. Mostly they are from 13th to 15th century. I included one example from the 17th century as an exception because it is so unique in its own right, and I will show you why. So there are no documents among the manuscripts I've studied, and they are all available at Hebrew PAL. So if you're interested, you are very welcome to see for yourself and draw your own conclusions. And final note on the preliminary part is that I'm going to use the terminology that we apply in Hebrew PAL, and in case anyone has any questions, please throw something heavy at me and I will stop and explain to you to the best of my ability. So we are going to talk first about invisible lines, when we are going to talk about letter making strategies, then we are going to talk about Aleph Lamed ligature or nexus, and then as a final treat, because they are so rare, we are going to talk about transitional letters. So invisible lines. I'm counting from up to bottom. So first example is letter Ayin from a manuscript from Parma from the 15th century. the script is identified as Byzantine Sephardic, and the invisible part is this. So normally you will not have this line at all. The scribe will lift up their writing implement, and you will have just a gap here. But since they didn't do this for some reason, we now know how this particular letter was produced. So it was a movement that started up here, went down, went up, then they turned the writing implement and they wrote the rest of the letter. Secondly, we have, these are the middle row. We have Ein and Kof from another Parma manuscript. This is this exception from the 17th century because it's a flyleaf added at the beginning of the manuscript where an owner added a note on the birth of his son. So again, let's talk about Ein. This is the same letter. This one and this one is the same letter. And again, the scribe should have lifted their writing instrument right here, but they didn't do this. So again, we can see how the movement went, the actual movement. So it started here, it went down, it went up, and it made this loop. Here you have an Ein. A little bit of an unusual Ein, but still very much recognizable. So this is another letter from the same flyleaf. And again, in the more classical representation of this letter, you don't have this part here. But in this case, probably this was the person's preference. Maybe he was in a hurry. We have no idea. But he started writing here, went up, and then went down, and made this little dot at the end. And so this part, instead of being written in the air and not leaving a trace, it did leave a trace, and we can see it. And our another example is actually the example of the connected writing of Zayn and Hey, Yod and Tav from Bibliothèque nationale de France, 15th century Sephardic highly cursive script. So, and these are the examples. And here, as a counter form, I decided to showcase how this letter should look in a more of a classical interpretations of them. But here, a scribe, they done this loop, and they immediately went to write another letter. So again, in the classical situation, this part will be done in the air. And here even it's a more faint, invisible line, but it connects the end of one letter and the beginning of the other letter, and it's sort of this super thin line, but still it tells us how the movement of the hand went in order to make it possible. Now let's talk more about how a letter is made. Here I present to you two allographs of the same letter. In the first row, it's the letter Shin or Sin. One example, this first one on the left, is the disrupted variant because, again, because maybe the scribe was in a hurry or for whatever reason, they didn't do the smooth connection here, but they did this little edge. And so we can see that this part is done in one movement without raising the writing instrument. And this part was done in a completely separate movement in the sense that writing instrument was lifted. And thus we have this little H. While in the normal variant or regular variant, more widespread variant, we don't have this edge, and so we can't be completely sure, we can't prove that this letter is written in the way it is most likely written. Second row is example of another letter of Selmech from another Parma manuscript from Italy dated to the 15th century. So this one is the disrupted one. and because of the way the instrument was made and because of how it was applied, we can see that it's done in two movements. One movement is the upper part and the right hand downstroke, and then we have the lower part and the left hand downstroke. Again, because it's not a regular occurrence, we have a proof as to why it was written this way. While in the more regular variant, we can't actually prove that this letter was written in exactly the same manner because we don't have this little edges popping up in various places. Another example of the same phenomenon is allographs again of Shin or Sin from another Italian 15th century manuscript. And here we can see how it's written in free movements with 3 times the writing instrument was lifted. And because of this unusual way to do this, we have a proof to say that this is how it was written. The lower row is again this 17th century flyleaf, where we can see that the more or less the same impression of the letter, more or less the same general shape of the letter was achieved via different means. So let's talk first of all about final mem, which are 2 letters here, and it should have started from the top and went up. And here again, from top and went to the left side. In Lamed, for examples here, we have a little bit more variety because, for example, in this case, in the left letter, we can actually see that the shorter stroke was down first, and then the vertical stroke was added on top of this, while in this case, we have less evidence to suggest this. And in this case, the right example, we again can see how the movement went. So most likely it went from up to down, and then it went to the side in order to make this cross-like junction. And another set of such allographs, we can have a mem, which is done with this unusual disrupted shape. Usually we will have 2 parts touch here, but the first row and the second row all appear in the same manuscript on the same page. So the scribe who was writing this, they made a large variety of final shapes of this letter throughout their work. And even a better example of the same feature we can see in 3rd and 5th and 4th example, where we can clearly see that in first example, this nose, which is this part, was done without lifting the writing instrument because it has this loop. While in the last variant, because of this edge, again, we have a proof that the instrument was lifted in order to write the nose and the rest of the letter as 2 separate movements. So here I gathered a line of allographs of letters through the same manuscript, the same scribe, the same specimen, to show to you how same form was achieved via different movements, that if we look very closely, if we zoom in really well, we can see how different they are. Because, for example, in this case, they are parallel and more or less straight. In this case, it's a hook. In this case, first of all, we have a hairline here, then we have a slanted and straight stroke attached here. Here it's attached on top of the left stroke. And here we have some variation of a dot, plus we don't have a connection here. So we have a same general shape achieved through a variety of movements. And it's even more visible in this case, where we have a nose of the slatted letter P, which is done either without touching the upper part of the letter or with touching with a little hairline. So again, this is also shows how using the different Hebrew PAL characteristics we can or features we can actually record all of them, and they will have different features. For example, this would be straight parallel to the headline, and this can be considered to be even rounded, this upper part. And it's still the same scribe, the same specimen, the same manuscript. Let's talk briefly about the variations in Aleph Lamed nexus ligature. This is one scribe, one specimen, one place in the specimen, which is a colophon. And here we can see that it has one of them has roof, others don't have. They have different form of chevron. Here it's rounded, and here it's half square one. And of course, all three of them have a completely different ductus, although they are all confined in this tiny little text of a colophon, which is not even it doesn't take the entire page of the document. Let's say another, if we compare Aleph Lamed nexus or ligature with with a lamed, and we can see how it works in stages. So this is more of a regular version with a gap between the upper part and the lower part. Here we can see that they are almost touching, so the invisible line is invisible only in here, while it should be invisible here as well. And in the Aleph Lamed nexus, we can see that finally invisible line is no longer invisible, but it's very visible, and it creates this specific shape of an Aleph Lamed nexus. Since I think that my time is ending, I'm going to skip from the cursive, and I will talk about the transitionary letters, because I find them exceptionally interesting when we are talking about the different modes of writing. And they are extremely hard to find, because all you are going to see in here is all I have found throughout the year of looking for them. So the first example is from Bibliothèque Nationale de France. It's 15th century Sephardi or Spanish manuscript, where we can see these are all allographs of one letter. And this one is more or less classical semi-cursive or Benoni, kappa shaped. It's because of this shape. And on the right, we already have a fully cursive form of what we call in Hebrew PAL a Hamza-shaped aleph. And we can see how it turns from one to another. And this example in the middle is what I call a transitionary letter, because it combines the features of both. And we can see how it was written. It went from up, then down, and without lifting the writing instrument, it went down again. And after this form was achieved, so it was written in one movement, when it started this evolution and became the Hamza-shaped aleph. Another example is of Taf, again, 14th century Sephardic Spanish or Provençal manuscript. This is the more or less classical Benoni or non-square form, and these are the evolution of this form to be done without lifting the writing instrument. It doesn't reach its final classical TAV format, but still we can capture the slips of the writing instrument by the scribe that has this hybrid forms. So another example, again, from kappa-shaped aleph to Hamza-shaped aleph. Again, this is one manuscript, one page by the same scribe. And they go from this into this. And what I was able to identify as the most important, this hybrid form, would be this one when both parts of the chevron begin to be written without lifting the instrument. And after you have done this, you can do with this form whatever you like, and you come eventually to this Hamza-shaped aleph. And in this case, we can see even two lines of the evolution. So this is the more traditional non-square or Benoni taf. Here it loses one movement and becomes a taf, which we have seen in the previous slide. Or we can have another trajectory where it loses the serif, but still is done in two movements with lifting the instrument. And then they all merge and become this more or less full-scale cursive form done in one movement with no chevron, and in this case it's even done with the same movement as the previous letter. So it becomes fully connected within the line of writing. Just the last example of this, again, this owner's note from the 17th century. We have three more or less forms that can be more or less attributed to the semi-cursive or non-square or Benoni style, and then they all get streamlined and reach this final form where both these parts get reduced to one little dot. And it all happens on this, again, this is all within one specimen, within one page of the manuscript. And let's talk about a little bit about my conclusions. So as I think Mark has highlighted in his presentation, Ductus is not the same as shape. Same movement can create different shapes, and different movements or sets of movements can create the same shape. And secondly, the emphasis seems to be on recreating the same overall expression and not on details. Thirdly, the set of movements that seems to be specific to ascribe a person who is actually doing the writing, as has been already highlighted, for example, yesterday, not to a mode or style of the script. And fourth, which is maybe self-evident, but I feel that it can't hurt to remind myself, first of all, about this, that it is hard to prove the pertinence of a significant part of movements or sets of movements for scripts on a Benoni or cursive spectrum. I'm going to finish on this. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to answer all your questions.